The Superstition Mountains rise abruptly from the Arizona desert, a vast wall of stone scarred by time and legend. To most travelers they appear serene, almost sacred, glowing gold beneath the sun. But for those who have lived in their shadow, these mountains are something else entirely. They are a place whispered about in fear, a place where people vanish and strange lights move against the sky. Even among seasoned hikers, few dare to explore their deeper valleys alone. Over the decades, the stories have multiplied encounters with something ancient, something watching, something that does not belong to the world we know. Long before prospectors and settlers arrived, the Apache tribes warned outsiders to keep their distance. They called these peaks the Devil's Playground, claiming that spirits guarded the entrance to an underground realm filled with forbidden power. Centuries later, those same warnings echo through every tale of the Lost Dutchman Gold Mine, legend of a man who discovered a fortune in gold and died trying to protect its secret. Some believe that what guards the mine isn't greed or curse, but an intelligence far older than humanity. And in modern times, when hikers return trembling or never return at all, locals remember the old stories and fall silent. One of the most chilling accounts began in the spring of 2000 with a woman named Angie, a dedicated hiker and nature photographer. She had explored the Superstition Wilderness countless times without incident. On an unusually clear morning, she set out alone, carrying a small backpack, a camera, and a bottle of water. The first few hours were uneventful. The air was crisp, the path familiar. Then, somewhere beyond an unmarked ridge, she noticed the silence so complete, it felt as if the desert itself had stopped breathing. Even the wind seemed to withdraw. She would later tell police that the landscape appeared subtly wrong, as if the light had shifted to a different hue of reality. Angie pressed on, uneasy but curious. She followed a narrow trail that curved toward a canyon she didn't recognize, though she had mapped nearly every mile of the area. In the distance something glinted, the outline of what looked like a metallic door built directly into the rock face. At first she thought it might be a mine entrance or an old storage vault, yet its surface was perfectly smooth, marked by no hinges or handle. She felt a vibration beneath her boots, a faint hum that seemed to pulse through the ground. When she raised her camera to take a photo, the device flickered and died. A second later, a rush of air surrounded her. No wind, only pressure, and everything went black. When Angie awoke, hours had vanished. Her watch read for 17 p.m., though by her sense of time it should have been late morning. The metallic doorway was gone, replaced by bare stone. Her backpack was open, contents scattered, and the batteries from her flashlight and camera were missing. Disoriented, she hiked back toward the main trail but realized she was no longer certain which direction led home. Panic set in as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Eventually, she found a marker she recognized and reached her car after dark. The next day she filed a report of a lost time episode, something park authorities dismissed as fatigue or dehydration. Yet Angie could not shake the memory of that vibration or the certainty that someone or something had been studying her. In the weeks that followed, her life began to unravel. She suffered intense nightmares of being trapped underground, surrounded by narrow tunnels lit by greenish light. During therapy sessions, she described figures moving at the edge of her vision. Tall, smooth-skinned beings with reflective eyes. Her therapist suspected trauma tied to isolation or a prior event, but nothing in Angie's history explained the depth of her fear. Then, during one session, she produced a small rod of translucent quartz she claimed to have found in her pocket the night she returned. The object pulsed faintly when touched, and engraved upon it were symbols resembling overlapping triangles. Laboratory analysis later concluded that the quartz was natural, but the etching was unlike any known tool mark, too precise, as if carved by focused energy rather than a blade. Angie's case quietly circulated among researchers of the paranormal, but official channels ignored it. Still, patterns began to emerge. Every few years someone reported similar phenomena, hikers describing humming vibrations, flashes of white light, or metallic structures that vanished when approached. A few mentioned figures resembling reptiles standing upright, often near cave entrances sealed by smooth rock. None of the witnesses had prior contact with one another. Each account was recorded separately, yet the details aligned with uncanny precision. The deeper history of the Superstition Mountains is steeped in such stories. During the 19th century, prospectors spoke of finding ancient tunnels laced with iron doors. Some claimed these doors were impossibly heavy yet perfectly balanced, swinging open with a single push and closing without sound. Inside, they found strange machines embedded in the walls, objects that emitted faint light, though no flame burned. A handful returned with samples of metal unlike any known, or most never came back. One miner's journal from 1886 describes hearing whispers in the dark, voices speaking a language he could not recognize. When he fled, he said, the entrance had sealed behind him as if the mountain had swallowed it whole. Modern researchers often dismiss these tales as exaggerations, products of greed and isolation. Yet the consistency of the reports, spanning more than a century, makes skepticism difficult. Photographs occasionally surface showing unusual geometric patterns scorched into the desert floor near the mountain base. Satellite imaging has revealed heat signatures far below the surface, arranged in a grid that resembles man-made construction. Geologists attribute the anomalies to natural lava tubes, but not everyone is convinced. Some former military engineers, speaking anonymously, have hinted at classified installations dating back to the 1950s. Others believe something much older occupies those depths. What truly haunts the Superstition Mountains, however, is not the possibility of buried technology but the mounting list of disappearances. Officially, 4 to 5 hikers vanish in the area each year, numbers often explained by rough terrain and dehydration. Unofficially, that figure may be higher. Locals tell of experienced outdoorsmen whose footprints end abruptly in open ground, as if erased by a blast of heat. Search and rescue teams report compass malfunctions and sudden radio blackouts concentrated near certain canyons. Dogs brought to track scent trails become agitated, refusing to proceed beyond invisible boundaries. Many rescue workers refuse assignments there after sunset. Among the missing is a young prospector named Jared Hollis, last seen in 2013. His final phone transmission described lights under the ground and a metal hallway that moves. Investigators recovered his phone months later, its casing partially melted though the surrounding soil showed no sign of fire. The official cause of disappearance remains undetermined. Friends claim Jared had been studying Apache oral histories referencing the Serpent People, entities said to dwell beneath the earth and guard sacred treasures. To some, his fate became further proof that those ancient warnings were not metaphorical at all. As these stories multiplied, journalists and researchers began to revisit the connection between folklore and physical evidence. In 1910, a cowboy working cattle near Weaver-esque Needle claimed he encountered little people with smooth yellow faces who spoke in chirps and clicks. They retreated into a crevice that glowed blue from within. When he returned days later with companions, the crevice was gone. Decades afterward, anthropologists studying the Yavapai legends found references to a subterranean race called the Kaka beings who would surface at night to collect stones that shimmered in moonlight. The resemblance between these myths and Angie's encounter, particularly the quartz rod etched with light, struck many as more than coincidence. Even skeptics concede that the Superstition Mountains hold mysteries that resist ordinary explanation. Magnetic irregularities interfere with electronics. Rare minerals refract light in deceptive ways, and sudden temperature shifts create optical illusions. Yet none of these account for the repeated reports of identical symbols, the identical sensations of vibration, or the identical vanishings. Something beneath those peaks seems aware, reactive, as if guarding a boundary we were never meant to cross. Whether it is geological anomaly or intelligent presence remains unsolved. But for those who have seen the iron doors or felt the hum of the mountain, doubt is no longer possible on this silence, and the uneasy knowledge that some secrets in the desert prefer to stay buried. In the years following Angie's ordeal, a quiet unease began to grow among locals who lived within view of the Superstition Range. Park rangers whispered of strange lights flickering near the ridge lines, sometimes appearing as narrow beams that shot straight upward into the night sky before vanishing without a trace. Old-timers claimed that before every disappearance, the mountains gave a low hum so deep it could be felt more than heard. Some thought it was the shifting of rock layers. Others believed it was the breathing of something vast beneath the ground. Government officials rarely addressed these reports. When they did, their explanations were brief and clinical: ball lightning, mirages, stress-induced hallucinations. But those who had seen the lights knew the difference. They spoke of precise geometric shapes, cubes, pyramids, and long rectangles that glowed within a fire. These lights moved intelligently, not like drifting flares but like silent aircraft scanning the desert floor. And whenever one appeared, cell service and radios failed across several miles. One evening in 2003, a pair of rock climbers camped near Peralta Canyon witnessed what they first assumed was a helicopter searchlight sweeping the slopes. When the beam turned sharply and descended straight into the rock face itself, both men froze. The ground trembled, the air crackled with static, and the light winked out. The climbers packed up and left before dawn, swearing never to return. That same week, rescue crews were deployed after a hiker went missing in the same canyon. His footprints led to a dead end against solid granite. Beyond that point, nothing. By the mid-2000s, local newspapers had stopped covering the vanishings. Tourism boards wanted the legend contained. Businesses relied on visitors seeking the myth of the Lost Dutchman, not tales of reptilian figures and vanishing doors. But independent investigators pressed on. One of them, retired police officer Daniel Graves, began compiling disappearances, stretching back over half a century. His files showed cluster-specific valleys and ridges where the incidents concentrated, forming an unmistakable pattern resembling a spiral. At the spiral's center lay a restricted zone marked on no public maps. Graves tried to reach it twice, each time turned back by unmarked black vehicles whose drivers refused to identify themselves. Graves' final note, written in 2009 before he abruptly moved away, contained only one sentence: "The mountain breathes through those doors." No one ever saw him again. His apartment was found empty except for a wall covered in photographs of the Superstition Range. lines of red string connecting canyons to ancient petroglyphs that depicted serpent-shaped gods descending from the sky. Native elders, when asked about these carvings, often grew quiet. Some admitted that their ancestors spoke of a cataclysm long ago when the earth opened and luminous beings emerged to teach humanity. When their purpose was complete, they retreated underground, sealing the entrances with unbreakable stone. The people were warned never to disturb those passages again. To do so, they said, would awaken those who sleep beneath. In 2011, geologist Martin Ellis received special permission to conduct subsurface imaging near the northern face of the range. He expected to find lava tubes or voids formed by erosion. Instead, his readings revealed vertical shafts with perfectly smooth walls descending hundreds of meters to uniform to be natural. When he presented his findings to the University of Arizona, his data was confiscated under federal review. He resigned soon after and refused interviews. The report never resurfaced. Meanwhile, hikers continued to vanish. A retired ranger, interviewed anonymously in 2015, confessed that certain trails were deliberately closed under false pretenses of rockfall danger. "It isn't about safety," he said. "It's about containment. They don't want anyone near the vents." When asked what vents meant, he would say, "Only, you can feel them. Air moves in and out like the place is alive." Photographers exploring the area at night captured spheres of light hovering silently among the cacti. When enhanced, the orbs revealed internal structure hexagonal grids as if composed of energy rather than gas. Others discovered symbols etched into stone slabs buried beneath the sand, identical to the overlapping triangles found on Angie's quartz rod. Each slab faced precisely east-west, aligned with sunrise on the spring equinox. The implication was deliberate engineering, but by whom and when remains an open question. The mystery deepened when a small team of spelunkers reported finding an entrance hidden behind a dry waterfall. They squeezed through a narrow fissure and emerged into a chamber that appeared to be artificially carved. The air was stale, metallic, and their instruments registered faint electromagnetic fields. One member took photographs before the group retreated. Days later, every image file on the memory card was corrupted, reduced to blank gray squares. Soon afterward, the spelunker who had carried the camera fell severely ill with radiation-like symptoms despite never being exposed to known sources. By 2018, the Superstition Mountains had become a magnet for fringe researchers, linking the site to the larger global network of supposed underground civilizations, Gotha Shambhala and the reptilian myths stretching from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica. Some pointed to parallels in iconography: serpent gods emerging from caves, luminous stones of power, forbidden doors and sacred mountains. Archaeologists dismissed these comparisons as coincidence born of human pattern-seeking, but to those who had touched the mountains, coincidence was not enough. The most haunting aspect remained the disappearances themselves. In several cases, victims left behind equipment switched on and recording. Audio recovered from one lost hiker's camera contained 15 minutes of faint mechanical hum followed by a deep, rhythmic pulse, 3 beats pause, 3 beats echoing like a distant engine. Experts who analyzed the sound could not match it to any known geological or mechanical source. The frequency lay just below human hearing, consistent with infrasound capable of inducing fear and disorientation. Such frequencies have been recorded at sites associated with UFO phenomena and certain ancient temples. Then came the 2020 incident that reignited national attention. A group of college students live streaming a hike vanished on camera. Viewers watching online saw their signal distort as the group joked about finding the Dutchman nest door. Static filled the feed, then a burst of light engulfed the frame. The live stream cut off. Search teams found their phones and backpacks at the site, but no footprints leading away. Federal agents arrived within hours, sealed the area and confiscated all digital evidence. The official explanation cited heat stroke and confusion, though nighttime temperatures had been mild. When locals learned of the incident, panic spread through nearby towns. Rumors surfaced of military vehicles entering the wilderness under cover of darkness, of helicopter flights with transponders turned off, of scientists seen hauling metallic crates toward restricted zones. No agency claimed responsibility. Even the local sheriff's office said they were ordered to stand down for national security reasons. Despite the silence, a few independent voices continued to document. Among them was journalist Rachel Moreno, who had followed Angie's story since 2000. In her final podcast episode, released before her unexplained disappearance in 2021, she described a series of coordinates sent anonymously to her inbox. When plotted, they formed a ring encircling the Superstition Range, each point corresponding to a known cave system. At the center of that ring sat Weaver's Needle, long rumored to be the heart of the Lost Dutchman legend. Whoever mapped this, she said, understood something, ancient, something buried, something still breathing. Her recording ends abruptly with a sound resembling the same infrasound pulse found in the earlier case. Today the mountains remain silent, witnesses hikers still go missing. Metallic humming is still reported. The official stance remains unchanged: natural hazards, misadventure, coincidence. Yet those who live closest to the range speak of nights when the desert glows faintly blue, when the wind carries whispers in a language no one recognizes. And as strange artifacts continue to surface, quartz rods, etched stones, and melted metals, one conclusion emerges, even among skeptics. Whatever operates beneath the Superstition Mountains predates us. It may not be alien in the modern sense, nor mythological in the old sense, but something that has observed humanity for millennia from below the crust, intervening only when disturbed. Those who have felt the ground tremble know the warning well. The doors are not abandoned. They are guardians breathing, waiting, and responding. The legend of the Lost Dutchman's mine has always hovered over the Superstition Mountains like a mirage, half truth, half curse. For more than a century, treasure hunters have combed the arid slopes, chasing stories of an impossible gold vein hidden in solid rock. The tale begins with Jacob Waltz, the German prospector whose name became myth. In the late 1800s, he staggered out of those peaks with sacks of nearly pure gold, or claiming to have found the richest deposit in North America. But Waltz took his secret to the grave, leaving behind cryptic maps and dying words that hinted at a cursed canyon where men vanish. In the decades that followed, hundreds went searching. Many never returned. Newspapers filled with accounts of bones found bleached in the desert sun, rifles still clutched in skeletal hands. Some of those who did come back spoke of narrow shafts that breathed warm air, and of doorways that appeared where no mine should be. A few described strange lights glimmering deep within the tunnels, lights that flickered in rhythm, almost mechanical. By the early 1900s, rumors spread that the mine was not merely a deposit of gold but an entrance to something far older. A prospector named Charles Flannery claimed that beneath a thin crust of quartz he found a metallic chamber whose walls were covered in embossed symbols. He tried to chip away a fragment, only to have his pickaxe rebound as though striking tempered steel. Days later, Flannery fell ill and died, his skin marked by burns that resembled lattice patterns. The coroner could not explain them. Old letters archived in Phoenix museums tell of miners who believed the treasure itself was a lure away to protect the true secret of the mountains. The Apache elders spoke of the Firestone, a source of unending energy buried in the heart of the range. Anyone who disturbed it, they said, would invite destruction not only upon themselves but upon the world above. To outsiders, these were parables. To those who lived near the superstitions, they were warnings carved into memory. During the 1930s, the U.S. Geological Survey attempted a detailed mapping of the region. Several teams reported magnetic interference so strong that compasses spun uselessly. One team's instruments recorded spikes of radiation in localized zones with no apparent mineral source. Their logs, later declassified, contained a curious phrase repeated by more than one observer: "The mountain pulses." When World War II erupted, the mapping abruptly stopped. Military installations sprang up across Arizona, and the Superstition Range was quietly fenced off in places. Locals noticed convoys of trucks heading toward the foothills at night. No one knew what they carried, but after the war, the fenced areas remained. Every request for access was denied on grounds of environmental protection, yet few official studies were ever conducted there. In 1968, an amateur archaeologist named James Foster claimed to have located the legendary mine using aerial photographs. He descended into a narrow cleft between two basalt columns and discovered a corridor lined with black, glassy material. The passage emitted a faint hum that seemed to vibrate in his bones. After walking several meters, he encountered a door, an immense slab, fitted seamlessly into the rock, devoid of hinges or handle. Before he could document it, the vibration grew unbearable, and a beam of white light flashed from beneath the door. Foster fled in terror. When he emerged, his watch had stopped. Photographs from his expedition showed nothing but blinding exposure lines. He later told a small radio station it wasn't a mine, it was something built, something alive. Days after the interview, he vanished. His vehicle was found abandoned near the base of the mountains, keys still in the ignition. The only clue left behind was a torn notebook page with a crude sketch of two interlocking triangles and the word breathing. By the 1970s, the myth of the Dutchman's mine had evolved into something darker. UFO researchers began linking the site to the emerging concept of underground extraterrestrial bases. Theories circulated about joint operations between unknown entities and secret government projects. The area became a meeting point for every kind of believer and skeptic. Yet, amid all the noise, certain details remained constant. Reports of infrasound hum, geometric symbols, and structures impervious to human tools. A former Air Force engineer known only as R.L. claimed in a 1978 interview that he had been part of a team monitoring geothermal anomalies beneath the superstitions. The data, he said, revealed an artificial heat pattern consistent with a large energy reactor. "We thought it was volcanic," he explained, "but volcanoes don't operate in perfect grid formation." Shortly after the interview aired, R.L. recanted his statement under pressure and disappeared from public view. Through the 1980s, researchers attempting to penetrate the region with ground-penetrating radar reported inexplicable failures, equipment powered down without reason, batteries drained instantly, even analog film fogged as if exposed to radiation. One expedition led by physicist Dr. Howard Lance claimed to have recorded a series of rhythmic pulses traveling upward through the crust every 12 minutes, so regular they could not be natural. Lance compared them to sonar pings, as if something beneath were mapping the surface. 2 weeks later, his lab caught fire, destroying all data. The few surviving notes mentioned the Guardian Network, a phrase later found in several native oral accounts referring to the Kaka spirits. According to legend, these entities use vibrations to sense intruders. If angered, the Earth itself responds. Modern scientists dismissed such tales as mythic personification of seismic activity, yet the coincidences remained too close for comfort. As the new millennium dawned, attention returned briefly with the emergence of satellite imaging that revealed peculiar heat plumes emanating from beneath Weaver's needle. Analysts proposed volcanic vents or water movement through hot rock. But the symmetry of the Paterna series of hexagons forming a precise ring did not fit any geological model. When amateur analysts published the findings online, the images were swiftly removed from public databases. Meanwhile, more physical evidence surfaced. A metal detectorist uncovered a fragment of alloy near the eastern slope that defied identification, lightweight silver gray, and immune to corrosion. Laboratory tests found it contained isotopes not naturally occurring on Earth. The report was quietly suppressed, the sample confiscated by visiting federal contractors. The discoverer was advised not to discuss it further. Those who have studied the superstitions for a lifetime agree on one thing: whatever dwells there is not random, it reacts. When disturbed, storms gather unexpectedly, electronic interference intensifies, and occasionally, the desert itself hums. Travelers have described moments when the sand vibrates underfoot and the air becomes heavy, filled with an odor like ozone before lightning strikes. Then, as quickly as it begins, the sensation stops, leaving only silence and the faint impression of being watched. It is this pattern of intelligent response that troubles even the most rational minds. Geologists can explain faults, magnetic stones, and mirages. They cannot explain a hum that changes frequency depending on human proximity. Biologists can catalog desert life. They cannot identify eyes seen blinking within sealed rock. Something in those mountains is aware, patient, and ancient. To some, it is the living echo of an earlier civilization, one that retreated underground long before recorded history. To others, it is evidence of an interdimensional threshold, a thin spot where our world overlaps another. Whatever the truth, the line between myth and reality grows thinner with every vanished hiker, every corrupted photograph, every map that refuses to stay accurate. For now, the Superstition Mountains remain silent. The fences still stand. The official statements remain unchanged. But each year, when the desert wind carries that low metallic hum across the canyons, those who have heard it know, the doors are still there, waiting for the next curious soul who dares to knock. The desert night had fallen like a curtain over the Superstition Mountains. The once glowing peaks now stood as black silhouettes, jagged against the dim horizon. A thin mist began to crawl through the valleys, swirling around the ancient rocks as if alive. For centuries, travelers had claimed to see strange lights moving through this same darkness. Some said it was the restless souls of lost explorers. Others whispered it was the curse itself, guarding what lay beneath. As dawn approached, the landscape revealed its merciless beauty again. The sunlight bled slowly across the cliffs, painting them in shades of amber and rust. Every grain of sand, every twisted saguaro cactus seemed to hold a secret. And beneath that surface, somewhere deep in the labyrinth of rock and time, lay the unanswered question that had drawn men here for over 200 years. What exactly happened to those who dared to uncover the legend? Those who had vanished were more than names lost to history. They were part of a pattern that repeated itself again and again. Ranchers, miners, explorers, and even trained soldiers had met the same end: disappearance, madness, or death under strange circumstances. The journals found near their camps all spoke of the same eerie sensations: footsteps echoing where no one walked, whispers in the wind that carried no source, and the feeling of being watched by something ancient and intelligent. One of the most haunting accounts came from a prospector named Adolf Ruth in 1931. He had spent years chasing the legend of the Lost Dutchman Gold Mine. His obsession with finding it consumed his life, driving him deeper into the superstitions despite warnings from locals. They told him that the mountains didn't just hold treasure, they held judgment. 2 months after his last letter, his body was found in a remote ravine, his skull separated from his torso. Near the remains was a map, hand-drawn, cryptic, and marked with strange coordinates. Authorities claimed he had fallen victim to the harsh desert conditions. But those who knew the region best swore it was something far worse. In the decades that followed, searchers who retraced Ruth's route reported hearing phantom gunshots echoing through the canyons. Some said they found human-like footprints that abruptly stopped in the middle of solid rock. One investigator, a former geologist, claimed that his compass began spinning wildly near a particular ridge, as if the mountain itself was rejecting magnetic logic. Whatever force lingered there, it was not something of the modern world. But not all who entered were treasure hunters. In the 1970s, a small group of anthropologists ventured into the superstitions, hoping to study ancient Apache burial grounds rumored to lie deep within the range. The Apache believed the mountains were the gateway to the underworld, a realm where the spirits of warriors walked forever. When the researchers failed to return, rescue teams discovered their campsite torn apart, their notes scattered and charred. The only surviving clue was a hastily scribbled phrase on a torn notebook page: "The mountain breathes." Those words became infamous among locals. Over time, they took on a life of their own, fueling theories that beneath the superstitions, something alive still moved, something that had been sealed away long before human memory. By the early 2000s, the legend had drawn the attention of not just adventurers, but also scientists. One geological survey team used ground-penetrating radar to map the subterranean layers below the range. What they found baffled even the most experienced among them: vast hollow chambers stretching hundreds of meters below the surface, arranged in unnatural symmetry. The data suggested engineered tunnels, not random cave formations. Yet when the team attempted to drill for samples, their equipment malfunctioned repeatedly. The project was quietly abandoned, the data locked away under federal archives. Still, whispers spread. Locals spoke of unmarked helicopters appearing near the mountain after dark, of roads suddenly closed by the Bureau of Land Management without explanation. Conspiracy theorists began connecting dots, suggesting that the government had discovered something extraordinary, something they were desperate to conceal. Among these voices was a former military contractor named James Porter, who claimed to have worked on a classified excavation near the Superstition foothills in 2003. In a recorded interview years later, Porter described strange anomalies during the dig: temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic surges, and a deep resonant hum that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. When asked what they were searching for, Porter hesitated, then said, "It wasn't gold. Whatever it was, they wanted it contained." He disappeared 2 weeks after that interview. Meanwhile, hikers continued to vanish. The most recent case involved two experienced outdoorsmen in 2016 who went missing near Weaver's Needle, the same formation many believed marked the center of the curse. When search teams found their camp, the tents were still zipped shut, food untouched. Their footprints led in two directions, one toward the cliffs, and another back toward the desert, both sets ending abruptly in the sand. Not even dogs could trace their scent beyond that point. Every few years, someone new attempts to break the mystery open, only to find themselves lost in it. Locals now refer to the region simply as the Forbidden Zone. They say at night, when the wind moves just right, you can hear faint voices calling out across the canyons, sometimes in English, sometimes in a language no one recognizes. For those who dare to listen, it's as if the mountain itself is speaking, warning, tempting, or perhaps remembering. Because in the Superstition Mountains, memory is a living thing. It breathes through the rocks, watches from the shadows, and waits for the next soul bold enough or foolish enough to search for what should never be found. As the years passed, the legend of the Superstition Mountains refused to fade. If anything, it grew darker. With every missing person, every unexplained light, every whispered story, the line between myth and reality blurred a little more. Locals no longer spoke of the mountains with excitement or curiosity. They spoke with fear. There was a weight to those peaks, as if the earth itself carried an ancient warning. Generations of Apache elders had always warned outsiders. The mountain was alive. They called it the place of the snake, the gate between worlds. According to their oral traditions, a great serpent spirit once guarded the underworld, slumbering beneath the stone. Disturb its rest, they said, and it would awaken the curse of endless hunger. Some dismissed this as symbolic myth, a way for the Apache to protect their sacred lands. But for those who had spent time among the canyons, the warnings carried an eerie ring of truth. A retired ranger named Joseph Warren once told a local journalist about a strange night in 1988. He'd been stationed near the northern edge of the Superstitions, patrolling a restricted trail after reports of illegal mining activity. Just after midnight, his radio began to crackle with static, a low-frequency hum that built into a high oscillating tone. Then, through the static, came what sounded like voices. Not one, but several. He described them as overlapping whispers, speaking in a rhythmic chant that sent chills down his spine. When he tried to respond, his radio went completely silent. Moments later, the ground beneath him vibrated faintly, like a pulse. He left the job the next morning. When asked about it years later, Warren said, "I don't know what's under those mountains, but it's not sleeping." By the 2010s, technology had made the mystery even more complex. Drone footage began surfacing online, showing faint glowing shapes near Weaver's Needle. One clip showed a circular light descending from the clouds and vanishing directly into the rock face. No explosion, no debris, just absorption, like the mountain swallowed it whole. Some viewers dismissed it as edited footage, others compared it to plasma phenomena seen at sites like Skinwalker Ranch or Hesteland Valley. Yet what made the Superstition case different was its consistency. Nearly every witness described the same thing: a feeling of being observed, followed by electrical interference, then silence. It was as if the mountain reacted to awareness, growing more volatile the more humans tried to document it. In 2019, a team of paranormal researchers conducted an overnight experiment near the Peralta Trail. They set up motion sensors, EMF detectors, and infrared cameras. Around 2:47 a.m., the sensors triggered simultaneously, detecting movement from multiple directions. The lead investigator, speaking through a body mic, whispered, "It's surrounding us." The next sound on the tape was a deep, inhuman growl that lasted 3 full seconds. By morning, the team's generator had been drained of power, and 3 of their cameras were missing. When the footage was recovered from the remaining cameras, the video ended abruptly, frames glitching out as if overwritten by static. Only one segment survived, a single frame showing what appeared to be a humanoid silhouette, unnaturally tall, standing among the rocks with eyes reflecting the infrared light. Skeptics claimed it was pareidolia, the human brain finding patterns where none exist. But to those who knew the superstition legend, it was confirmation that something ancient still walked beneath those skies. Later that same year, hikers reported encountering men dressed in unmarked tactical gear near the same ridge. When approached, these men reportedly told the hikers that the area was under environmental protection lockdown, but there were no records of such restrictions with the Forest Service. One of the hikers, a retired police officer, later claimed that one of the men carried equipment resembling a Geiger counter and that the device had been clicking like crazy. Then, for the first time in decades, the mountain went silent. Fewer disappearances, fewer sightings. It was as if whatever lived beneath had gone dormant again, or was simply waiting. In the winter of 2022, a geologist named Maria Thompson conducted an independent study on magnetic anomalies in Arizona's desert plateaus. Her readings around the Superstition Range defied normal explanation. Spikes in geomagnetic intensity followed by abrupt null zones, patterns that repeated with mathematical precision. In her field notes, she wrote, "These readings mimic the structure of a man-made power grid, but miles underground." Days after she published her preliminary findings online, her post vanished. Her university profile was deleted. No one has seen her since. Locals say the land changes those who spend too long near it. Animals avoid certain canyons entirely. Birds that fly too close to Weaver's Needle often drop from the sky mid-flight, their wings stiff, their eyes open but lifeless. It's as though something unseen drains the energy out of living things, not violently, but with quiet inevitability. By now, the legend of the Lost Dutchman's gold had evolved into something far more sinister. What if there was never any gold to begin with? What if the so-called mine was a cover story, a convenient myth to disguise something buried much deeper, something powerful enough to alter the very fabric of the desert? A theory emerged among researchers who studied both the geological and paranormal reports. They proposed that the Superstition Mountains might conceal a network of ancient tunnels, not natural caves, but remnants of a civilization predating the indigenous tribes. Carvings found in hidden alcoves matched no known culture. Some depicted human figures kneeling before towering beings with elongated skulls, rays of light connecting them to the sky. Others showed spirals descending into the earth, perhaps maps, perhaps warnings. One inscription translated roughly to, "the gift that burns." No one could agree on what that meant. Some claimed it referred to sacred fire, others believed it described a power source. A few more radical voices whispered that it was something extraterrestrial. Whatever the truth was, it had been protected for centuries. Every explorer who tried to claim it either vanished or went mad. It was as if the mountain chose who could see its secrets and who would be consumed by them. One Navajo elder once said, "The mountain listens. If your heart is greedy, it will hear you." And perhaps that was the real curse of the Superstition Mountains. Not gold, not treasure, but temptation itself. Because even after centuries of death and disappearance, people still come, drawn by the promise of answers, of fortune, or simply the thrill of defying the unknown. But the desert has no mercy for those who ignore its warnings. The last recorded disappearance came just a year ago. A young couple, vloggers documenting America's most haunted trails, entered the mountain range with high-end equipment and a live stream audience. Their final broadcast cut out mid-sentence, right after one of them said, "Wait, did you hear that?" The feed froze on a single frame, a dim canyon, faint dust rising in the flashlight's glow, and then darkness. The footage has never resurfaced. In the stillness of the desert, time seems to stretch and bend. The Superstition Mountains stand unmoved, eternal, watching, patient. Their jagged edges cast shadows that shift like ghosts when the sun begins to fall. By night, the stars above seem closer than anywhere else on Earth, flickering like eyes that have seen it all before. And maybe they have. To this day, the legend of the Superstition Mountains remains one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. It's a story that has consumed treasure hunters, scholars, and scientists alike, each one lured by the same question: what lies beneath? But no answer has ever been found. Only fragments, stories whispered through time, journals scorched by the desert sun, maps drawn by trembling hands, each clue leading deeper into the unknown. Some say the truth is buried within the rock itself, hidden beneath miles of sandstone and quartz. Others claim that the mountain is not a mountain at all, but a seal, a lid over something that was never meant to be uncovered, an entrance perhaps, or a prison. A few researchers have pointed out the unusual seismic activity that occasionally rattles the region. Small tremors, always localized, always unexplained. There are no active fault lines beneath the superstitions, yet the earth there sometimes seems to breathe, expanding and contracting like the chest of a sleeping giant. If you stand there in the early hours of dawn, when the world is silent and even the wind holds its breath, you can feel it, a vibration underfoot, faint but alive. It has the kind of sensation that makes you wonder if the old legends were never meant to be metaphors. Modern explorers who've tried to debunk the myths often leave the area with changed expressions. Even the most skeptical scientists describe a strange psychological effect, an unshakable feeling of being watched, of time slowing down, of thoughts echoing in their own minds. Some have even reported hearing their names whispered in the wind. The Apache once warned that those who enter the forbidden canyons risk losing not just their way, but their soul. They said that the mountain feeds on obsession, that the more one seeks its secret, the more it consumes the seeker. And looking at the countless lives claimed by this legend, it's hard not to see a pattern. Gold, fame, discovery, power, different words for the same hunger. Maybe the curse isn't in the mountain at all. Maybe it's in us. Because every generation someone new feels that same irresistible pull, the need to uncover, to understand, to conquer. And every generation the mountain answers in silence. Today the Superstition Mountains remain under strict federal protection. There are entire regions where GPS loses signal, where compasses spin without direction, and drones refuse to stay airborne. Officially, it's all explained as electromagnetic interference caused by mineral deposits. Unofficially, those who have been there say the feeling is far deeper than that, almost sentient. A former pilot once described flying over the area at night and watching his instruments die one by one: altimeter, compass, navigation, all failing in sequence. Through the cockpit window, he saw lights moving across the ridges, not aircraft, not flares, but glowing spheres that floated in deliberate formation. He said they followed his plane until he crossed the boundary line of the protected zone. Then they vanished instantly. When asked years later what he thought they were, he said only this: whatever's in there knows when you're re-looking at it. There's a strange duality to the superstition legend, beauty and terror intertwined. The same mountains that glow red at sunset, breathtaking and eternal, are the same ones where people vanish without a trace, where radios die, where maps lie. And maybe that's why the story will never die, because it isn't just a story. It's a mirror reflecting humanity's oldest fear, the unknown. Even now, hikers still come, ignoring the warnings. They follow the same trails carved by those before them, chasing gold, truth, or the thrill of facing the impossible. Some return with stories that sound like dreams. Others never return at all. The desert keeps its silence. Sometimes after a storm, fragments wash out of the canyons, a boot sole, a broken pickaxe, a rusted canteen. But the mountain gives back only what it chooses, never enough to close the story, just enough to keep it alive. At night, when the wind howls through the narrow passes, it carries voices that don't belong to this time. They echo through the stone corridors like the heartbeat of something vast and buried. Those who have heard it say it sounds like the earth itself is whispering a warning, but it's never in words we understand. And so the legend continues, the tale of a mountain that guards its secrets with silence and shadow, where time stands still and the line between the living and the lost disappears. Perhaps one day, someone will finally uncover what truly lies beneath the Superstition Mountains, but if that day ever comes, it might be one the world will wish had never arrived.